Alright, welcome to Solving Square Root Equations, Level 2. Now we're going to hit like 5 or 6 rapid fire examples where I'm going to show you how to solve progressively more and more difficult square root equation problems. So I'd really encourage you to stay to the end, but I'm going to try and really keep this at a fast pace. So here we go. We have 5 equals the square root of x minus 2. Notice the first thing we have to get rid of is, of course, the square root. So, referring to our previous video, what is the opposite of a square root? Well, that would be a square. So what I do to the right, I do to the left. And so we would say, okay, well, 5 squared is 5 times 5, which is 25. My square root and my square cancel, and I have left over x minus 2. From here, to get rid of minus 2, I'll do plus 2, and 25 plus 2 is 27, is equal to x. All right, let's move on to example number 2. Okay, in example number 2, we see that we have 2 square roots of x plus 7 equals 13. Now I really want to bring you all back to our PEMDAS mnemonic. Oh, and I'm so sorry. Once we get away from linear functions, let's actually start calling this GEMDAS. Okay, GEMDAS. And here we see that we have a grouping. Our grouping is always inside the function, that's that x plus 7. We see that we have the square root symbol. That is actually, the square root symbol is actually an exponent. So a square root is actually the same as saying something to the power of 1 over 2. So it is, in fact, an exponent. We have the multiplication. We're multiplying by 2. And those are the only operations that we have. So let's kind of get rid of those in reverse order. How do you get rid of multiplication? Well, you use division. So we divide both sides by 2. Okay. And I didn't intend for this to be a decimal, but you know what? Life happens, and this is fine. So 13 divided by 2 is actually 6.5. Okay? From there, how do you get rid of the square root? Well, we know that the opposite of a square root is, in fact, a square. So what we do to the left, we do to the right. Our square root and our square cancel. And now we have x plus 7 is equal to, and I'll actually have to use a calculator for this. Let's see, 6.5 times 6.5. Which will give us 42.25. 42.25. Okay, so that decimal is not too bad. And then from here, well, we're in our grouping, but how do you get rid of the plus 7? Well, we simply do minus 7. Okay. And we get this, x is equal to 42.25 minus 7 should give us 35.25. All right, that was example 2. Like I said, we're going to move through these relatively quickly. Now, I really encourage you to see this next example because this next example is going to look weird. And then after that, I'll do kind of like the full where we incorporate everything. So let's move on to our weird example. Okay, I find for some reason a lot of students really struggle with this particular setup, where there's no grouping. There's nothing being added or subtracted to the value of x. Okay, so let's just kind of like really be intensive about how we want to label this. And remember, what we're going to do is we're not going to use PEMDAS, we're going to use GEMDAS. Okay, GEMDAS. And let's identify all of our operations. Well, there's no grouping here. We do see that we have the square root symbol, which is actually our exponent. Remember, the square root is to the power of 1 over 2. And we see we have our multiplication. And then we have our addition right there. Okay, so when I'm working in reverse order, the first thing I get rid of is the addition. So how do I get rid of this plus 6? Well, of course, I do minus 6. And 15 minus 6 gives me 9. So now I have 9 is equal to 3 square roots of x. And then from there, how do I get rid of the 3? Well, remember this 3 is being multiplied, so the opposite of multiplication is, of course, division. And we have 9 divided by 3, which is 3, is equal to the square root of x. Now at this point, you're probably really good at this. How in the world do I get rid of the exponent? How do I get rid of the square root? And we know the opposite of a square root is a square. So we will square both sides. Our square root and our square cancel. And 3 squared is actually 9. So we say x is equal to 9. All right, let's move on to our fourth example where we put everything together. I would highly encourage you to stick around for this one. Okay, here we have example number 4. And this is where we put every element together. So we have 12 is equal to, and let's go ahead and write our GEMDOS mnemonic to see like, okay, in what operations do we have and in what order do we get rid of them. So the first thing that I note is I actually have my grouping on the inside of the function. So I have that. The second thing I know is that my exponent is of course that square root. I see that we have our traditional multiplication, and I see that we have subtraction. Okay, so working in reverse order, the first thing of course that we want to get rid of is the subtraction. So let's do plus 9 and plus 9. Now from here, 12 plus 9 gives me 21, which is equal to 3 square roots of x minus 8. The next thing I want to get rid of is my multiplication. Well, what gets rid of multiplying? And of course that is dividing. So we'll divide both sides by 3. Okay, at this point, 21 divided by 3 is 7. So I have 7 is equal to the square root of x minus 8. At this point, I ask myself, how do I get rid of my exponent? How do I get rid of my square root? And we should know the opposite of a square root is a square. So we'll square both sides. And so 7 squared is 49 is equal to the square root and the square cancel, x minus 8. And at this point, well, to get rid of my grouping, how do I get rid of the minus 8? Let's do plus 8. All right, and we get this. X is equal to 49 plus 8 is, of course, 57. All right, I hope that these 4 examples helped you out. I'm actually going to go ahead and do one more kind of bonus example if you would like to stick around and see it, just because I know that these can be tricky when you're first learning them. Okay, this one could be interesting because we have a fraction, and I think we're going to have some large numbers. So let's get to it. When I look at this, I ask myself, what do I get rid of first? My multiplication, my square root, my addition inside the grouping, or my subtraction? Well, we should know that we always get rid of our subtraction on the outside of the function first. So how do you get rid of minus 12? Well, we can do plus 12 and plus 12. At this point, we now have 1/2 square root of x plus 7 is equal to 8 plus 12 is 20. Now you might be asking yourself, well, wait a second. Should I divide, to get rid of the multiplying by 1/2, should I divide both sides by 1/2? Remember, there's a better way to do this. In order to get rid of any fraction, you want to multiply instead by its reciprocal. So the reciprocal of 1 over 2 is really 2 over 1. So times 2 over 1. And those go away. Okay, so now I have the square root of x plus 7 is equal to 20 times 2, which is of course 400. Now from here, just like in every single other example, how do I get rid of a square root? And what I do is I square both sides. My square root and my square cancel, and I'm left with x plus 7 is equal to 40 squared. Now 40 squared is really 40 times 40. And I don't know if you know you can do this, but whenever you have a 0, you can actually slide the entire number to the right. You can just drop that 0. 4 times 0 is 0, and 4 times 4 is 16. So 40 squared is of course 1600. And in order to get rid of that plus 7, I can do minus 7, and we have this. X is equal to 1,593. All right, I hope that these 5 examples really help you out, and I'll catch y'all in our next video.